Experts have been predicting a pandemic for the longest time.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes.
These predictions have even made their way into popular culture.
So we have a virus with no treatment protocol and no vaccine at this time.
There were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion.
So why didn't we have a vaccine ready for COVID-19? Especially since COVID-19 is a strain of the coronavirus, which already caused 2 recent pandemics. Well, we're about to explain why, as well as what we can do while we wait for a vaccine to be made. First off, how do vaccines work? Well, ironically, they work by giving you the virus, but in a good way. Scientists take a weakened version of the virus, or merely parts of the virus, and they inject the virus into humans, where our immune system responds by fighting it off. And because the viruses are weakened or just fragments, our immune system wins. Now, our immune system knows how to fight off the virus. So if the real virus infects us, our immune system can deal with it. There are other more cutting-edge methods of vaccine development, but they all work towards the same goal, which is to train our immune system to beat certain viruses. Scientists agree that this is the best way to end the COVID-19 pandemic.
The ultimate solution, the only thing that really lets us go back completely to normal, is to create a vaccine so that we have vast immunity and this thing, no matter what, isn't going to spread in large numbers.
In fact, it's how we've eradicated previous diseases like polio and smallpox. So since a pandemic has been predicted, and recent pandemics like SARS and MERS were also strains of coronaviruses, why didn't we have a vaccine ready?
I think we must understand that all of these coronaviruses are unique viruses. If we need to develop a vaccine, we need to develop a unique vaccine for each type of coronavirus. One for SARS, one for MERS-CoV, one for COVID-19. So they're not the same.
There are efforts to develop vaccines that work on entire groups of viruses, such as for all coronaviruses or all influenza viruses. But such vaccines just don't exist yet. Generally speaking, vaccine development is just not easy.
It's estimated that the average cost of producing a single vaccine is between US $200 to $500 million. We must recognize also that vaccine development takes a long time. It's estimated that the fastest we can produce a vaccine, removing a lot of regulations and protocols that are normally in place, which are actually safety protocols. If we remove all those, probably in 18 to 24 months is the earliest we can see a vaccine.
Many other experts have suggested a best case scenario of between 12 and 18 months. Even then, with a whole lot of caveats.
If you're talking about COVID-19, no vaccine has been approved for mass use. They're only candidate vaccines, meaning they're only undergoing trials.
To be specific, that means clinical trials, after having gone through earlier phases of tests, possibly on animals. And these clinical trials are pretty extensive.
There are 4 phases of clinical trials. Now, phase 4 is a post-marketing phase, so you need not undergo phase 4. But for drug regulatory authorities, they require up to phase 3 trials. So the phase 1 trials is basically just to look at safety, so a very small group of healthy people who do not have any disease, just to check whether it is safe to be administered in humans. And once it's demonstrated to be safe in a small group of individuals, then people move to phase 2 trials, where you don't just check for safety, but you do it in a larger group and you check whether it does what it's supposed to do. So you try it in somebody and you measure, for example, immune response, have they got sufficient antibodies, and how long do the antibodies last, is it still safe to use, and so on. And then in phase 3 trials, you do it on a very large scale. And this is typically where people do on a multi-center basis, meaning across countries, across borders. And now, if it's demonstrated in phase 3 that it is safe, it is effective, then the company will apply for a license from the drug regulatory agencies.
And that's just the clinical trial stage, that prove that the vaccines work and that they are safe. They still need to be mass-produced to be made available to everybody.
Other drug companies which have the capability to produce vaccines can then apply for the right to mass-produce this vaccine, provided they meet the stringent criteria which is laid down for production of vaccines.
So even though about 35 companies and academic institutions all around the world are scrambling right now to create a vaccine, including one in Malaysia, We have to accept that it's going to take time to create a vaccine that's both safe and effective, because rushing this process might do more harm than good.
Normally, we don't fast track anything, of this nature, simply because of the dangers of producing something which will be more harmful than the disease that it was trying to prevent in the first place. And there have been incidences of that happening.
So this is why most governments are focusing on so-called non-pharmaceutical interventions, like social distancing. According to this study from the Imperial College COVID-19 response team, one strategy could be what it calls intermittent social distancing, where interventions may be relaxed when case numbers dip below a certain threshold, but quickly reimposed when they surpass a certain threshold. The study recommends this to carry on until a vaccine is available. This particular study has been credited with influencing the UK and New Zealand's government to adopt social distancing in the first place. So while a vaccine is still seen to be the most likely way to beat this pandemic, we must understand that it might take some time to arrive. In the meantime, it is on all of us to stay healthy.
Doctors are the last line of defense. The health service is the last line of defense. The front line of defense is the general population. It's every one of us. If we don't break the transmission of this virus, if we don't stop the spread of this virus in the community, then we will lose this war, because the last line of defense will not be able to cope with the number of coronavirus infections, the severe ones that are coming through to the health service.